Please join me in welcoming, and I'm going to start at the far end, Juan Suarez. He's Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Southwest Airlines. He's the company's executive-level champion for both internal and external DEI-related organizational goals. He also serves on the board of the National Diversity Council and the Dallas Hispanic Law Foundation. He earned a bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of Oklahoma and a JD from Cornell University Law School. Sitting next to him is Rudy Rodríguez, the Chief Legal and Human Resources Officer and Corporate Secretary of CEC Entertainment, which along with franchisees operates more than 650 Chuck E. Cheese and Peter Piper pizza stores. With a BA in political science from Texas A&M and a law degree from Harvard, he previously worked in private practice and served as an in-house counsel for several national corporations. And in the center is Shenece Garner-Johns. She's the head of inclusion and diversity at JCPenney, which operates more than 650 stores across the United States. She has more than 2 decades of leadership experience, including posts at Lockheed Martin, Alcon, Deloitte, and Accenture, and earned a bachelor's degree in business from Austin Peay State University and a master's degree at Vanderbilt. And next is Dr. Harpreet Nagra. She is Senior Director of Clinical Oversight at Supportiv. She's a licensed psychologist, applied behavioral scientist, and a clinical researcher with 17 years of behavioral health experience. She specializes in digital health psychology, dedicating herself to support people living with mental health differences and developing programs that lessen associated systemic inequities. And rounding out the panel is Elena Gambon. She is a market strategy and product growth leader who is responsible for client growth, marketing, and product collaborations at First Stop Health. She's a pioneer leader in employee-focused digital healthcare and earned a BS from Washington University in St. Louis and an MBA and a master's in public health from the University of California, Berkeley. Please welcome our panelists. All right, we're going to kick things off with a little icebreaker. And no, we're not going to talk about what tree you'd be, as mentioned in the hallway there. I'm hoping that each of you can tell us about a turning point or a key moment when you felt an inclusive boost to your career from a colleague, mentor, or supervisor. And Elena, let's start with you.
Thank you so much. Well, I first just want to say I'm really honored to be up here. I have a very cool and esteemed set of panelists with me. So I am the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer at First Stop Health, and I have been in digital health and employee benefits for my entire career. But I started out as a patient advocate on the phone with patients, helping them understand what a high deductible health plan is and why a bill doesn't match an EOB and how to find a really good gynecologist. And the only reason I was hired for that role was because I speak Spanish. And I had no other qualifications. In fact, they turned me down the first time because I neglected to let them know that I speak Spanish. And I really wanted the job, so I called them back and I asked if there was anything I could do. And I mentioned that, one, because I think it's sort of directly answers your question, but it also was a really formative moment in my career and helped me shape not only how I think about creating an inclusive workplace for my employees, but also how I think about crafting a patient care engine that's clinically competent and focused on the needs of the individual. So that was my moment.
Excellent. What about you, Harpreet?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a licensed psychologist now, but I would say back when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life in my early 20s, I was not sure exactly what the academic path looked like, if I was going to become a doctor or not. There was nobody in my family who had gone to graduate school. So I would say the very first moment was when I went to one of my college professors and I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm going to apply to what was then called a diploma mill and try to get a doctorate that way. And he was also a person of color, and he said, I think you can do better. Aim for whatever you want to do, and we'll just figure out the rest as we go. So I think that was the first moment. And then the second moment I want to highlight is when I was a candidate for an executive position. And the SVP who was sitting across from me was also a woman of color, and she saw something in me. She saw potential that others did not see. So I just want to highlight, the two big boosts that I've gotten in my career have been from other folks who had similar experiences, similar life experiences as I have had. And they've been sort of the guiding path to where I am today.
That's wonderful. What about you, Shenece?
Thanks for the question. Good afternoon. So similarly, I was in another life working for an organization, and I was up for a mid-level promotion. And I'd been working with this team for about 18 months. And as I mentioned, being up for the next level, I was told that because people didn't know me and they had no experience with, my work, they were going to make me wait another year to prove myself. Well, I was working with a partner who didn't like that answer. He'd been working with me. He knew my work performance, my work ethic, and what I accepted when they told me I wasn't going to get the promotion. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, keep my head up, and keep moving. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a promotion. What I didn't know happened is the partner went into the room where it happens and actually started pounding on the table to say, she deserves a promotion. I think she should get promoted, and here's why. Now, that was my first experience with sponsorship, and I didn't even know what that meant back then. I didn't even know that existed. Now, I've had other interactions since then where I've had individuals advocate for me in the rooms where it happened without me even knowing it. And I think it's so important. It's an important point for women and people of color, particularly Black women, to have someone, a white man, to go in the room and say, she deserves this promotion. I'm going to take a risk on her, and I think she should get this, and it worked. So that was my first experience.
That's a great story. What about you, Rudy? Key moment or boost to your career?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. In 2000, I was with the legal department at American Airlines, and I had been in their litigation group for 3 years and was working for a woman named Laura Einspanier, who's still one of my mentors and role models to this day. The position of General Counsel of American Eagle Airlines, the commuting airline, which was just one carrier at that time that was owned by American, came open, and she suggested that I apply for it. At that time, the American Airlines General Counsel position was also an employee of American Airlines legal department, but loaned over basically to American Eagle, depending on who was selected by the GC, the General Counsel of American Airlines AMR Corporation. And so Laura suggested that I put my name in the hat for that, because I'd done some work for American in my job and American Eagle, and she thought that I'd done a good job on it, and that I could do the job. She told me I could do the job before I knew I could do the job, and that gave me the confidence to apply and to feel confident in suggesting that I should be taken on for that position, and I got it, and that's where I had a few years in that role and gave me the experience that made me sure that I wanted to do that kind of work for as long in the rest of my career as I could make it happen, and I've been blessed to be able to do that at CEC, and it's really turned my life when I had somebody believe in me like that.
That's so great. And Juan?
Well, I'm not going to hold it against Rudy that he worked for American. That's okay. I know him, so we'll give him a pass. No, Christina, I love this question because you said it's an icebreaker, but it's actually more than that. I mean, you learn so much about these individuals on the panel, number one, but also the importance of inclusion and reaching out. So I'm going to do a little bit of a twist on mine. So recently, a couple of months ago, I was featured on a national news channel. And not in a good way. I was completely mischaracterized, and it was a lot of negative commentary towards me as an individual, me and my role at Southwest Airlines, and and many people took the stance of, well, that's part of it. That's part of this work. You got to be able to take the lumps. But I did have some colleagues reach out to me on the weekend just to say, hey, how are you? Are you okay? What can I do for you? I've not been in this situation before, but exhibiting empathy just in that little moment gives me a feeling of inclusion, which is so very important when we're talking about this topic. And so it's a little thing, and I think it's important because sometimes the little things really do matter.
Absolutely. That's a terrific story. Thank you for sharing that. I apologize on behalf of the media. All right, so now we're going to get to some individual questions that really delve into each panelist's specific experiences and expertise. And we're going to keep it right with you, Juan.
Okay.
So Southwest is a globally recognized pioneer in demonstrating the impact that corporate culture can have on a company's success. But an exemplary corporate culture, as you've said, does not automatically create an exemplary DEI culture. So can you tell us what you've learned about this?
Yeah, I think there's a very important distinction here. You know, I'm very proud of the history of Southwest Airlines. I've been with Southwest almost 23 years. We're a company that's 50 plus years old, and we are known for our people culture. Everything you hear, that's exactly what it's like. I mean, the people culture is very, very strong. But it's very important, at least from my perspective, that we not confuse a people culture with a DE&I culture. There's synergy between the two, and they build on each other. But a DE&I culture has to be very intentional. And I think that it's a very important distinction. Making jokes on the aircraft, having fun, connecting with people, that's important, but that doesn't necessarily make for a strong DE&I culture. And so that's a real important message that I have focused on the last couple of years to really explain and help people see that we can build on these two. We can use them together. But having good on one side does not mean good on the other, and vice versa.
Right. Like you mentioned, it's a strong foundation to start. But yes, they are not one and the same.
Right.
All right, Rudy, going to turn to you now. CEC Entertainment established a DEI council just in 2020, and you've been trying a variety of things to see what works. You're far from alone. Many businesses are at this point in the journey. So people are always interested to learn what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned so far, and how has that journey been for you?
Well, the key word is journey. It's we're nowhere near there, and I don't think that there is an end point on this journey. We're just going to keep on walking it. But one of the things that we've learned, and that I've learned, many things that I've learned along this way is that I'm no expert, and that I need to go to folks who know more about this than I do. So we were able to identify and retain a local firm called Canaries to help us in our path and give us some guidance. And they continue to consult with us and help us in many respects. They helped us with a survey of all our employee population in the first year that we retained them in 2021. And we're about to revisit that this summer and see where we've come and what else we've got left to do as far as employees perceive. But one of the other things is that we're trying to get to a place where, across the country, in all of our locations, that our leaders and our team members consider DE&I in as many decisions as possible. That it's ingrained as part of the thinking process in decision making, in promotions and evaluations, in hiring. And so we're trying to ingrain it in all of our processes in HR as well. So as the executive sponsor of the council, what we try to focus on is communication and repetition, and just hopefully over time, those of our employees who've been around a while start to hear and see the same messages and they start to ingrain them. It starts to be part of who we are as a company. A lot of it has been part of who we are without speaking about it, frankly. It's been easier than it would be at some other places, I think. We've been lucky in that regard. We started off with a lot of diversity among our team. Now the question is, how do we get so that every level of the organization is diverse and inclusive, and that we're thinking about it in all of our key initiatives.
Excellent. Being really intentional at the start, then you don't have to think about it anymore. It just becomes part of who you are, as you said. All right, Elena, like Rudy and CEC, you and First Stop Health are on the newer side of formalizing your DE&I efforts. As a company with about 100 employees, you can also speak to challenges and opportunities for smaller businesses. You've had early success with about 1/3 of your workforce getting involved. Tell us about your DEI initiatives and its 6 pillars and how you've made it work.
Yeah, so much of what Juan and Rudy have said really resonates with our story, which is we are at the beginning of our DEI&B journey. A large part of what brought us to the point of being more proactive than reactive was direct result of data from an employee engagement survey. And I cannot stress enough how important it is if you are looking to encourage the executive team to get on board to show and support with data. Because we were able to show that even though comp and benefits and leadership and management and culture over time were improving, DEI&B was ticking down slowly over time. And I had the tremendous luxury of having a really incredible network from Berkeley where I asked for advice, and we retained some consulting services to help us craft a council. About 1/3 of the employee base wanted to get involved, and they are themselves involved in not only identifying the gaps and the needs, but also solving for the problems and recommending solutions that have budget behind them. So we have 6 pillars of initiatives: talent and hiring, data and reporting, product and marketing, community engagement are some of them. And we are just in the early stages of identifying key initiatives from each one that we want to implement, continuing to assess how we're doing, getting outside feedback from people who've built their life and career around doing this so that we are truly guided by experts. And I think one of the biggest challenges is that we're a small company. And so we have to be mindful about the resources we can deploy that are appropriate for our size. But the benefit is that people can build it together. And so much of the company is actually involved in the decision making that it feels like we're creating the ship together and moving in the same direction.
That's so great to get that buy-in, especially at all different levels. And 1/3 of the company so far, that's wonderful. All right, Shenece, you're up. At JCPenney, you focus on inclusion as it relates to associate career growth and leadership advancement. Tell us more about your strategy and the impact it's having on recruitment and retention.
I think that's the hard question. So at JCPenney, inclusion is just the fabric of, who we are. It's part of our value proposition. With a little over 50,000 associates, it's important that associates feel like it's a place where they can bring their whole selves to the workplace, they can come, grow, and thrive. And so, building upon, and I joined JCPenney in July of 2022, so I'm on my journey, and the organization is on a journey. And we've been in this space for a while. So, from a maturity standpoint, there's been a lot of good work that was done before I joined the company. But what I will talk about from a strategy perspective, we, much like what you've heard from the panel here, we are using data to gather insights, data to drive decision making. So not only are we using our associate engagement survey, we're using demographic data, we're using feedback from our J voices to inform on what are the needs, and building upon the fact that we have a majority female workforce, we're almost majority BIPOC associate base, and so how are we continuing to build leadership teams that are reflective of our demographics and the communities in which we serve. So that's one part. The second part is ensuring that DE&I gets embedded within and gets integrated within the business. And so making sure that we're at the table, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's a new initiative, but making sure that we're being consulted and that we are advising. And so that's really important. We're also ensuring that we're embedded throughout an associate's life cycle. So from a talent and total rewards perspective, that we're integrated in that way as well. And so that's really important. And then from a third perspective, thinking about DE&I from an overall experience. And so we have a few pillars that we pull some levers on to ensure, and that includes how we are creating awareness and building that cultural competency within the organization. So how we are educating is important, how we are holding leaders accountable. And then how are we purposeful in terms of how we are investing our time and resources with the different initiatives and our philanthropic partnerships. And so, and then lastly, I would say we are trying a lot of new things. We are experimenting, and we're doing it with a growth mindset. And so that, in a nutshell, are kind of the 1, 2, 3, 4, or the way we're approaching our strategy.
Excellent. It's interesting, a lot of people, when they started out being intentional about this, it was kind of like a one-off or something to the side. You are all talking about how important it is to ingrain it in everything that you do, and I think that will lead to faster and more significant success. All right, time to put the glasses back on. All right, Harpreet. At Supportiv, you work hard to remove distractions that prevent people from showing up as their whole selves. This means addressing mental health concerns and emotional burdens. Tell us more about how workplaces can provide support for their employees as whole people, something that has been especially challenging for minority and underrepresented populations.
Absolutely. There's this great quote by a shaman Kelly Harrell, and the quote is, "We don't heal in isolation, we heal in community." And similar to what Juan was saying earlier, where you had a negative experience and it was your community that reached out to you, and that question of how are you felt so healing in that moment. That is the essence of what Supportiv is, but we provide it digitally. So Supportiv, for those of you who don't know, is a digital peer-to-peer support platform where anybody can go online and receive support anonymously. And the reason we wanted to keep it anonymous is because the data is clear. Men, communities of color, elderly, there's a number of folks who are not accessing mental health support, emotional support, because there's a fear of judgment, there's mental health stigma, a number of issues that are keeping folks from receiving the support and access to the community that they need and want. So Supportiv, our founders, they had personal experiences where they had lost family members or friends due to depression, due to mental health concerns. And they just noticed that there wasn't any platform out there where you could just get access to a community and feel like you belong somewhere. And so Supportiv was created with that idea in mind. And our goal at Supportiv is to help companies make good on their promise of being equitable, being inclusive, by helping the employees come to a place where they can feel safe, where they can be brave enough to share what's coming up for them that's keeping them away from their jobs, right? So we all have things that come up for us on a regular basis. Life happens, kids, grandparents, parents, husbands, wives, partners. There's so many issues that we have to manage on a regular basis, and all of it can be distracting from the work that we do. So we help employers help their employees by creating this safe and brave space so anybody, regardless of who you are, can come and share what your experience is, receive the appropriate support, and have resources along the way to move along on your journey.
That's wonderful. That's one of the, I think, positive things that's come out of the pandemic is people, you're going to see things in the background on Zoom, right? So you're going to become more aware of what's going on in your employees' personal lives. So it seems to be people are more open about it. And so that's wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, Juan, Back to you. I'm going to delve into a little deeper on something that we've kind of mentioned, but in your role as VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, you've worked to build on Southwest's Corporate Culture Foundation to infuse DEI into the company's business structure and decision-making processes. How have you pursued this, and how is it working?
So, when I think of just D&I in general, I mean, you've heard this phrase before, I'm sure, it's an ocean. There's so many things that you could do. And I'm sure as we sit here, we could think of a million things that we want to do to help infuse that DE&I into our businesses. But I really think that you've got some experts here on the panel, because the consistent message that I think we all have is that you have to have a strategy in place. And at Southwest Airlines, we're very fortunate because our CEO has made DE&I one of the foundational 5, which is a focus for the next 5 years. That gives a fantastic platform for me and my team and my colleagues to say, this is important and we do need to figure out how to continue to infuse it into our business. And what we did is we did take some time, stepped back, and really looked at this from a corporate strategy standpoint. And we put together a 5-year DE&I strategy for our organization. And I think that's a really important thing to do. Your strategies look all different, and sometimes they look the same. It depends on the organization. But it kind of goes back to what Elena mentioned earlier, that you base that strategy on your values, you're going to be able to lay it out really nicely. And that's what we did. We based it on our values and we laid a strategy in place. Now, the trick is sticking to that strategy, right? And that's key, because putting it together, it looks great, and that's a great PowerPoint. I love it. But are we doing it every day? And that's where we get to come in and just really help to push that over the line. And I just think it's critical.
How are you doing that? How are you making sure that you stay on track?
Well, so fortunately, like I said, for me, I've got buy-in from the top, and I think that that's really important. And so I'm giving a lot of freedom and leverage to make sure that I can tap on the shoulder and I can pull people along and say, hey, let's not forget, when we're talking about talent, this is what we're shooting for. When we're talking about transparency, this is what we're shooting for. Social brand, what are we focused on? Those types of areas are highlighted areas for us as an organization. And it's interesting, in this space, because sometimes it's very hard to determine what does success look like. Yeah. And so you have to be really thoughtful about that. And I will say, we're on a journey too, and we are still trying to determine how are we going to define success in each one of these areas.
All right, Rudy, speaking of success, one area in which you've had success is in talent development and top performer recognition. Tell us more about this and how it's helping you identify high potential employees.
Well, I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't be so boastful as to say we've had success. We're working on it. We think that we're doing a decent job of it. But like Juan said, you can't do any of this without support from the top, and that means the CEO. And we wouldn't have this whole initiative were it not for a CEO who cares about it and who pushed it and who inspired it at the beginning of the journey. One of the things that he was very focused on was really building out our talent development program. That we had done the traditional 9-box for years at the company, but our new CEO is not new anymore. He came in 2020, just in time for the pandemic and everything else, which was awesome for him, I'm sure. One of the things he wanted to do from the beginning was to start this talent development program. That was more of a conversation than just a check the box exercise on paper. And so certainly there is a paper rating exercise being done by the leaders, and we do it from the general manager position on up from there. And so each person's manager assesses how somebody is doing, but also the individual does a self-evaluation and identifies areas that they believe are strengths and opportunities. and they talk about special talent that they might have, whether languages they might have, interests that they might have that we might not otherwise know about, interest in travel, interest in sales, interest in whatever else they might want to put down. And so we find out, and then, so those instruments are gathered up and compiled into a page or so per person. And then we have a big meeting where the top leadership of the company sits with the field leadership of the company, and we go through each district and each region in course, and then go through each and every one of those people. And we talk about, what we see on there, who are the comers, who are the folks that we think are the high potentials, and as well as how that matches up with the performance, of course. And then we try to keep, where we're trying to get, though, is so that everybody has this in mind, and so that when positions come up, we look to fill them internally before we go external. And if somebody's looking for a job, for a position, to fill a position at the support center, that somebody out in the field has indicated an interest that they would like to get into IT, they would like to get into learning and development, whatever it might be, then we think to ask them, we think to go to them. And in that conversation, an innate part of that conversation is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't necessarily say the words, but it's kind of hanging over everything that we're talking about. And that's where we see the great diversity of talent that we have, and it feeds into decisions and conversations as we go forward.
Well, it sounds like those conversations, just taking time to get to know your team members better, really has a lot of benefits for everyone, for all sides. That's important to take the time to do that. All right, Shenece, one of the things that we talked about in our panel prep call was JCPenney's Associate Value Proposition, a framework that puts the associate at the center of everything you do. And this sounds like a winning formula. Can you tell us more about the strategy and how it has been working?
Absolutely, and you're absolutely correct. The associate is at the heart and the center of everything, and our associate value proposition is what connects us, our shared purpose in terms of how we exist to, celebrate and serve America's diverse working families. And our associate value proposition actually came about as a result of feedback from our associate engagement survey. It came about from feedback from focus groups and hearing from associates and what they wanted. And the AVP, we love our acronyms. The AVP has 4 pillars: shared purpose, well-being, personal growth and development, and empowering individuals and teams. And it's working really well for us. And we use it as a guiding post, as a North Star in terms of the initiatives, programs, platforms that we want to bring forth. I would say one of the ways that we're seeing it work in real time, in real life, is as some companies are starting to pull back from the hybrid working arrangements. Some companies are bringing in associates and their employees back into the workplace. We're leaning in to our hybrid workforce. We're leaning into continuing to operate in this hybrid way, and our associates are telling us that that's what they want, and we're listening to them. And so a great part of it is asking and listening to our associates.
Sounds so simple.
In theory, yes. If only.
If only. Elena, along with internal initiatives at First Stop Health, your services are built to support employees of all backgrounds to better understand their actual lived experiences. Can you tell us more about this, please?
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about how all of our DEI and B initiatives include some component of bringing that into the business itself. And we are in the business of caring for patients. And so inherently, if you are not thinking about that patient on an individual level and recognizing their diverse set of needs, you are not serving them properly and you are not meaningfully impacting their health. And that is even more exacerbated by the fact that many, if not the bulk of our clients, are clients who are in industries that I like to refer to as craft work. So these are people who are not behind an email, shift work, sometimes facing higher social determinants of health, financial barriers, access to care. A lot of people that we support are part-time, under or uninsured. And so we really had to build our entire solution set, which is virtual care across behavioral and physical health spectrum to serve those needs. And we have sort of a three-legged stool that we think about when we think about delivering DEI and B in patient care. So the first leg of the stool is equity of access. Now, inherently, virtual care increases equity of access because you don't have geographic barriers, you don't have to get in the car and have transportation to go see the physician. But you also have to think about things like modality. Not everybody has a smartphone, and not everybody has broadband, so there needs to be a phone number that someone could call from a landline to talk to a doctor. You have to think about time. Not every patient can take off at 2 on a Tuesday. You need weekend appointments and early morning and evening appointments to help people. And you have to think about who needs access. So we deliver the solution to employees and the entire household as the employee defines it, because every family looks different. It's not always just children. It can be a neighbor. It can be a grandparent, right? So increasing access across the board, not just the variety of languages that we need to support, but thinking about it holistically is really important. The second leg of the stool is clinical caliber. And that takes the form of creating a provider network that is representative of the patients that we serve, so that they understand the reality, the lived reality of the people that they're talking to. And that we give them enough time to understand who that patient is. Trust in a provider comes from touch points. It comes from time. You can't learn about a patient and why they're not taking their medications in 5 to 7 minutes. You need to spend time with them. So we really think about this idea of, and I'm sure it's been said today, equality does not equal equity in healthcare. Just because you're delivering what seems to be a sort of wonderfully broad and accessible set of services doesn't mean it's serving individual employees. And then the last leg of the stool is assessment. So we have to look at every single data cut to make sure that the quality of care and the efficiency of care is equal across cohorts, regardless of where they live or the language that they speak or what time of day they're calling in from or the industry that they're in. And that's our measure of how we need to improve over time. And so that has really been a central tenet of who we are. In addition to serving our employees, who are the drivers of that work, we need to make sure that it's just incredibly inclusive in who we are as a company if we're going to have any meaningful impact on people's health.
If I could add to that, so we are experimenting with something very similar in terms of the benefits that we're offering to our front line. So the majority of our workforce is hourly, frontline, 50,000 associates. And so we are looking at how we can offer benefits that are unique to demographics and geography, and it's exactly what Elena is talking about in terms of even mental health benefits that we offer. And an example of that would be that for a particular demographic, we'll feel more comfortable with speaking to a provider that may resonate with them because they have a similar demographic. And so we're trying to open up the aperture and open up the space in ways like that. So we're experimenting with our benefits in that way.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. All right, Harpreet, one of the challenges for businesses that strive to help people be their authentic whole selves is by addressing mental and emotional issues, as we've discussed. But some businesses shy away from this due to concerns about boundaries. How can companies help people feel supported without being probed?
It's a very good question, and I think it's one that we regularly debate. I teach a class at Harvard, and there's executives from multiple organizations there, and regularly we're talking about culture and DEI and inclusion, and this is probably the number one question that's asked. Mainly because there's a duality there, right? As a company, as an organization, you want to be able to give your employees what they need. You want to be able to say we're wanting to be inclusive or wanting to be equitable and diverse. At the same time, if you don't know what to do when an employee kind of spills their guts, it's hard to manage that or know what to do to manage that. So I think a couple of things. One is kind of what psychologists have been doing for many, many years, decades now, which is letting the person guide you. So what Elena was saying earlier, do surveys, do assessments, do analyses where you invite opinion of your employees along the way and ask them, what is it that you're needing? I think that alone, kind of getting that feedback on a regular basis lets you know that this is not a sort of experience that you're going to master. It's a journey, it's a process, and it's constantly evolving. And if you have a feedback system that allows you to change and evolve with the needs changing and evolving as they do, that is the best way to sort of set that up. And I think the other thing that we practice at Supportiv, and something that I encourage all of the sort of folks that I work with on a regular basis, is this idea of practicing cultural humility. You don't know what people need, right? You don't know what the experience of one person is to another person. You have to ask. So similar to setting up systems to collect data, you also have to engage in the practice of just sitting down with the other person and asking the questions of, what is your lived experience like? And so at Supportiv, the way that we do that, the way that we encourage our moderators who moderate all these digital chats and encourage peer-to-peer support and build that community, is we invite each of the moderators to ask every single person that logs in as a user of our platform to ask the questions. What is your lived experience? What did that make you feel? What did you do in response? We invite them to engage in that conversation as much as they possibly can. So I would say those are the main 2 points in practicing cultural humility and asking the person along the way.
And remember that cultural humility, that's important too, instead of thinking you know everything or just making assumptions. Yes. I think people do that. All right, so this question is for whomever would like to answer it. So several of you have spoken about the importance of intentionality when it comes to establishing and sustaining DE&I strategies. What other factors are critical to create a truly effective and meaningful platform? And what are the biggest challenges you face? I think this is the question that we get most often when people are talking about this. Who wants to take a stab?
I'll do it. Am I on? So I would say, just to kind of reiterate what's been said up here, having leadership alignment, having a leadership team that's bought in is really important to success. And I'm proud to say that I have that at JCPenney. The challenge that we are, the opportunity, I'm going to put it that way, the opportunity we have is how do we reach the 50,000 of our closest friends that are on the front line. So it's really easy to put in place, programs and initiatives that our home office can participate in, but our frontline, their hourly workers, part-time, and so it's really tough to engage. And so that's been our challenge: is what can we do to get them more involved? And one of the ways that we're experimenting, another experiment, I'm fond of experimentation and growth mindset, so you'll hear that. If you know me, you'll hear me talk about it a lot. But we are experimenting with an app called WorkJam, and WorkJam allows time entry, allows them to pick up a shift and maybe even get paid, or experimenting with dig pay. But we're also able to push content to our front line where they don't have access to our internet or to email, and we can push some D&I content. We can push a video that we want them to watch. And so that's a way that we're trying to meet that challenge. But I would say that's probably one of our greatest opportunities, is how can we better engage our frontline.
I'll just add to that real quickly. I love that idea, and you use the word experiment, but I think of it more as like, take that bold step. I mean, everything that people have been talking about here, it's bold and it's unique to the company or the industry that you're in, and I think that's the only way we really make movement in this space. Is it always going to work? Yeah, not so much, and that's okay too. We got to be willing to flex, but be bold, and that's how we're going to keep this moving.
Excellent. Well, we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you all to end with this question. As it relates to your pursuit of these initiatives and these endeavors, what has you most excited about the future? And let's start with you, Elena.
So I think one of the things that we think a lot about at First Stop Health is this idea of growth, which it is part of my title, so part of my responsibility is growth. But we think about it as the number of patients we get to serve. And we're at this really incredible point where, because we've built the right resources, we can sort of over time exponentially support more and more people and learn how to expand into serving even broader markets. And so while the core tenet of who we are is serving the employer space, over time there is a tremendous amount of appetite from leadership and from within the company to be of service to more people and to reach more people and to be a first place that people go when they need healthcare. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to be in a relationship with those patients, because that is why we do what we do.
That's why you do what you do. Okay, what about you, Harpreet?
I would say across the board, I think there's this overarching mindset shift that's happening where, when you're working in corporate America, typically there's been a lot of focus on outcomes, driving, OKRs and KPIs and, hitting your objectives, whatever they might be. But with the topic that we're talking about today, diversity, equity, inclusion, I don't know if there is an outcome for us to reach. Like, you will never know when you have fully included everybody. It's a process. It's an ongoing process. So I think there's a mindset shift that's happening societally that I'm really excited about, which I hope that we don't give up on, because it is hard work. And panels like this, I think, are exciting to have and to maybe even highlight even more so than we have been. Because that is what's going to reinforce that growth mindset and the idea that this is an ongoing journey and a process that we're all on, and there are no right answers. It's just we all need to be in it together.
Excellent. Shenece, what has you most excited about the future?
So, to echo, what I've just heard, I'm really excited about the opportunity to be a change agent within my organization, to be bold, to try some different things and experiment. But I also want to make sure that I'm not moving to the next shiny penny. So I want things to stick, and so I want to give some of these experiments a chance to actually come to fruition and go beyond just the launch. So the WorkJam app that we're going to be rolling out, I'm really excited about that, because that gives us a chance to see what's going to work with how we interact with our front line. And then I'm also looking forward to, we're a national company that happens to operate overseas. And so I'm looking forward to expanding and engaging our associates in India, Bangalore, Korea, North and South Asia.
All right, Rudy?
Well, from my perspective, the energy and enthusiasm of our council members and just their passion for what we're trying to do and creativity, those things make me excited. And it's good when things come from them and I don't have to drive things, they're driving it for me. That makes me excited and gives me hope about how this is going to go in the future, at least at my enterprise.
That's wonderful. And Juan?
You know what? I think the panel captured it perfectly. I mean, it's never ending, and I think that is exciting, actually. You think about it like customer service. When are you ever done giving great customer service? You're not. You're going to keep going, and to me, that's really exciting. To be able to champion this is very, very important to so many people.
Excellent. Thank you all for your insights. Please join me in showing our appreciation to the panel.